A 6-year-old boy named Carter is found crying and alone outside a rural gas station in Montana, clutching a torn photograph and a note that reads, "I can't do this anymore." His mother has vanished without a trace, leaving him with nothing but bruises on his arms and fear in his eyes. The gas station attendant calls the police, but before Child Protective Services arrives, a lone biker named Eli Stone Mercer pulls up on his dusty Harley. He recognizes something in the boy's eyes, the same emptiness he once carried himself. Stone kneels beside Carter and promises him one thing: "You're not alone anymore." What begins as a simple act of compassion spirals into something far greater. Within hours, Stone makes a single phone call to his old crew, the Iron Riders, a brotherhood of veterans, fathers and men who've all walked through fire. By dawn, over 200 bikers roll into that small Montana town, not with rage or violence, but with silent solidarity and a unified purpose: to protect one child the world forgot. But this isn't just about rescue. As the story unfolds, Stone uncovers a network of corruption involving local authorities, a cover-up tied to Carter's mother's disappearance, and a promise Stone made decades ago to a fallen brother. "If I ever find a kid alone like we were, I won't let him fall through the cracks." What follows is a 7-chapter journey of loyalty, moral justice, redemption, and the unbreakable bond between a man haunted by his past and a boy searching for hope. The roar of engines becomes a symphony of second chances, and the road ahead, though long, is no longer traveled alone. If you're ready to witness how one promise can move mountains and unite an army of iron hearts, stay with us. This is a story about family you choose, honor you keep, and the courage it takes to stand when no one else will. The desert wind carried dust across the cracked pavement of Route 47, where the only sign of life for miles was a flickering neon sign that read, "Last Stop Gas and Diner." It was 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in late August when the call came through. Linda Vargas, the evening shift attendant, had just finished restocking the candy aisle when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong, soft, broken, a child crying. She stepped outside, shielding her eyes from the setting sun, and froze. Near the edge of the lot, beside a rusted dumpster, sat a little boy. He couldn't have been older than 6. His jeans were torn at the knees, his red t-shirt stained with dirt, and his small hands clutched a crumpled photograph like it was the only thing tethering him to the world. His face was streaked with tears, and his eyes, wide, terrified, searching, locked onto hers. Linda's heart sank. She approached slowly, kneeling a few feet away. "Hey, sweetheart," she said gently. "What's your name?" The boy didn't answer. He just stared at her, his bottom lip trembling. "Where's your mom? Your dad?" Still nothing. Linda looked around. No car, no adult, no explanation. Just a child abandoned, as if he'd been left behind like forgotten luggage. She reached for her phone and dialed 911. "Sheriff's Department," a bored voice answered. "Yeah, this is Linda at Last Stop Gas on Route 47. I've got a situation here. There's a little boy, maybe 6 years old, sitting outside alone. No parents, no car. He looks scared." There was a pause. Papers rustled. "We'll send someone out. Might take 30-40 minutes." 40 minutes? Linda's voice sharpened. "He's a child. Ma'am, we're short-staffed tonight. Just keep him safe till we get there." The line went dead. Linda cursed under her breath and pocketed the phone. She turned back to the boy, who was now staring at the horizon, as if waiting for someone who would never come. That's when she heard it. The low, rumbling growl of an engine. Deep, heavy, unmistakable. A motorcycle. Linda stood and turned toward the road. A single headlight pierced the dusk, growing brighter as it approached. The bike slowed, then pulled into the lot with a controlled ease. The rider killed the engine, and for a moment the only sound was the wind. The man who dismounted was tall, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face that spoke of years spent under open skies. His leather vest bore a patch, Iron Riders MC. His name was stitched above it in faded thread, Stone. He pulled off his helmet, revealing close-cropped grey hair and eyes the colour of storm clouds. He didn't say a word at first. He just looked at the boy, and the boy looked back. Something passed between them. Recognition. Not of faces, but of something deeper. An unspoken understanding between two people who'd both known what it felt like to be left behind. Stone walked over slowly, his boots crunching on gravel. He stopped a few feet away and crouched down to the boy's level. "Hey, kid," he said quietly. His voice was rough but kind. "You okay?" The boy shook his head. "What's your name?" A whisper. "Carter." "Carter." Stone nodded. "That's a strong name. You waiting for someone, Carter?" The boy's eyes filled with tears again. He held up the photograph, a faded picture of a woman with dark hair and a tired smile. "My mom," Carter said, his voice breaking. She told me to wait here. She said she'd come back." Stone's jaw tightened. He glanced at Linda, who stood nearby with her arms crossed, her expression grim. "How long's he been out here?" Stone asked. "At least an hour, maybe longer. I called the cops. They said 40 minutes. Stone exhaled slowly through his nose. He looked back at Carter, at the bruises on his forearms, faint but unmistakable, at the fear etched into his small face, at the way his fingers gripped that photograph like it was all he had left. Stone made a decision. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts and hit a number he hadn't dialed in months. It rang twice. "Stone?" The voice on the other end was deep, cautious. "That you?" "Yeah, Reaper. It's me. Haven't heard from you since. I need the crew." There was a pause. "What's going on?" Stone looked at Carter, who was watching him with wide, hopeful eyes. "There's a kid," Stone said. 6 years old. Abandoned. Alone. And I just made him a promise." "What kind of promise?" Stone's voice dropped, steady and absolute. "That he's not alone anymore." Another pause. Then, "How many you need?" "All of them. All of them. Every rider who can roll. I don't care where they are. I don't care what they're doing. Tell them to drop everything and meet me here by dawn." "Stone, I know what I'm asking, Reaper, but this kid, he's got no one, and I'll be damned if I let him slip through the cracks like we did." Silence. Then quietly, "Where are you?" "Last stop, gas. Route 47, Montana. We'll be there." The line went dead. Stone pocketed his phone and looked back at Carter. He extended his hand. "You hungry, kid?" Carter nodded. "Come on. Let's get you something to eat. And I promise you," Stone's voice was firm, unshakable, "you're safe now." Carter hesitated. Then, slowly, he reached out and took Stone's hand. And in that moment, everything changed. Comment below where you're watching from, and stay tuned. This is only the beginning. The call went out at 7:13 p.m. Reaper, vice president of the Iron Riders and Stone's oldest friend, sat in his garage in Billings, Montana, staring at his phone. He'd known Stone for 32 years. They'd served together, bled together, and built the Iron Riders from nothing but brotherhood and scrap metal. If Stone was calling in the entire crew, it wasn't a request, it was a reckoning. Reaper stood, grabbed his keys, and made the first call. "Chains, it's Reaper. Drop what you're doing. Stone needs us." "What happened?" "Kid. Abandoned. 6 years old. Stone's with him now." There was a beat of silence. Then, "I'm rolling in 10. Reaper hung up and dialed the next number, then the next. Then the next. Within 20 minutes, the word spread like wildfire across Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. Text messages lit up. Phones buzzed. Voices echoed through garages, workshops, and living rooms. "Stone needs us. There's a kid. We ride at dawn." No one asked questions. No one hesitated, because that was the code. That was the promise they'd all made when they patched in. When one of us calls, all of us answer. By 9 p.m., Stone sat in a corner booth inside the Last Stop diner with Carter beside him. The boy ate slowly, a burger, fries, and a chocolate milkshake, while Stone watched the parking lot through the window. Linda brought over a refill of coffee and slid into the seat across from them. "Cops still aren't here," she said quietly. Stone's jaw tightened. "They will be, eventually. And when they show up, what are you going to tell them?" Stone didn't answer right away. He looked at Carter, who was staring down at his plate, his small shoulders hunched. "I'm going to tell them the truth," Stone said. "That this kid was left here, alone, and that someone needs to answer for it." Linda studied him. "You really think they're going to let you walk out of here with him?" "I'm not asking for permission. Stone, I made him a promise, Linda, and I keep my promises." She nodded slowly. "You're going to need help." "I know. It's already coming." At 11:47 p.m., the first bike arrived. Stone heard it before he saw it, the familiar rumble of a Harley-Davidson cutting through the stillness of the night. He stood and walked to the window. A lone rider pulled into the lot, his silhouette framed by the pale glow of the gas station lights. He killed the engine, dismounted, and removed his helmet. "Reaper." Stone stepped outside. The two men stood facing each other for a moment, then Reaper crossed the distance and pulled Stone into a firm embrace. "Hell of a reason to call in the crew," Reaper said. "Yeah, it is." Reaper glanced toward the diner. "The kid inside?" Stone nodded. "Name's Carter, 6 years old. Mother left him with nothing but a photograph and a note that said she couldn't do it anymore." Reaper's expression darkened. "You think she's coming back?" "No." "And the cops?" "Late, as always." Reaper exhaled slowly. "How many are we expecting?" Stone looked him in the eye. "I told you to bring everyone." Reaper's mouth curved into a grim smile. "Then you better brace yourself, brother, because by sunrise, this place is going to look like a damn army rolled through." At 12:34 a.m., the second wave arrived. 3 bikes, then 5, then 10. They came from Bozeman, from Missoula, from Coeur d'Alene. Veterans, mechanics, truckers, fathers, men who'd fought wars, survived loss, and rebuilt their lives on the open road. They came because Stone had called, and that was enough. By 2 a.m., there were 30 bikes parked outside Last Stop Gas. By 3:30 a.m., there were 70. By 4:45 a.m., the sun began to rise, and with it came the rest. They rolled in from every direction, a convoy of iron and leather and loyalty. The sound of engines filled the desert like thunder, and the earth itself seemed to tremble beneath their wheels. Stone stood outside the diner, Carter beside him, watching as the horizon came alive with headlights. 50 bikes, 70, 100, 150. Linda stepped out of the diner, her eyes wide. "My God." Reaper walked up beside Stone, arms crossed, a look of quiet pride on his face. "You asked for everyone," he said. "You got everyone." Stone counted the riders as they parked, forming a perfect line along the edge of the lot. Chains, Hammer, Wrench, Joker, Viper, Old Guard, Forge, riders he hadn't seen in years, riders he'd bled with, riders who'd sworn the same oath. We protect our own. And now, Carter was one of them. By 5:15 a.m., the count was final. 203 bikers, all of them there for one reason, to stand for a child the world had forgotten. Stone knelt down beside Carter, who stared wide-eyed at the sea of leather and metal surrounding him. "See that kid?" Stone said quietly. "That's your family now. Every single one of them showed up because you matter. You hear me? You matter." Carter's eyes filled with tears. But this time they weren't from fear. They were from hope. At 5:47 a.m., and a sheriff's cruiser finally pulled into the lot. Deputy Mark Halloway stepped out, adjusting his hat, his expression shifting from annoyance to shock as he took in the scene before him. 200 bikers, all standing, all watching, all waiting. Stone stepped forward, Carter's hand in his. "Deputy," Stone said evenly, "we need to talk." Halloway's hand drifted toward his holster. "What the hell is this?" "This," Stone said, his voice like iron, "is accountability." Deputy Mark Halloway stood frozen beside his cruiser, his hand still hovering near his sidearm. His eyes darted across the sea of bikers, 203 riders standing in perfect silence, engines off, arms crossed, faces unreadable. The morning light cast long shadows across the pavement, and the only sound was the wind cutting through the desert. Holloway swallowed hard. "I'm going to need you all to disperse. This is official business." Stone didn't move. "This became our business the moment you took 4 hours to show up for an abandoned child." Holloway's jaw tightened. "We had other calls. We're short-staffed." "Short-staffed!" Stone's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "A 6-year-old boy was left alone at a gas station, and you had other calls." "Look, I don't know what you think you're doing here, but—" "I'm keeping a promise," Stone interrupted. "Something you should try sometime." Holloway's eyes flicked to Carter, who stood close to Stone's side, his small hand gripping the biker's calloused fingers. The deputy's expression softened slightly. "Kid," Holloway said, addressing Carter directly. "What's your name?" Carter didn't answer. He just stared at the ground. Stone spoke for him. "His name's Carter. His mother left him here yesterday evening with nothing but a photograph and a note. She's been gone for over 12 hours. No phone call, no explanation. Just gone." Holloway pulled out a notepad. "And you are?" "Eli Mercer. People call me Stone." "You related to the boy?" "No." "Then you don't have any legal authority here." "Neither do you," Stone said flatly. "Not until you prove you're here to help him, not bury him in the system." Holloway's face flushed. "That's not how this works." "Then explain to me how it does work, Deputy, because from where I'm standing, this kid's been waiting for help that never came. So we came instead." Reaper stepped forward, arms still crossed. "You want to talk about how this works? Fine. Here's how it works. That boy was abandoned, alone, scared. And when the system failed him, 200 men showed up to make sure he'd never be alone again. So if you've got a problem with that, you're welcome to try moving us." Holloway looked around. Every biker was watching him, not with hostility, but with expectation, as if daring him to do the wrong thing. He exhaled slowly and holstered his weapon. "All right, let's take this inside. Just you," he said, pointing at Stone. "And the boy." Stone nodded. He looked down at Carter. "You good to go inside with me, kid?" Carter nodded. Stone glanced back at Reaper. "Keep everyone calm." Reaper grinned. "Always do." Inside the diner, Stone and Carter sat across from Deputy Holloway in the same corner booth where they'd eaten hours earlier. Linda brought over 3 cups of coffee. One for Stone, one for Holloway, and a hot chocolate for Carter. Holloway flipped open his notepad. "All right, let's start from the beginning. Carter, is it?" Carter nodded. "Can you tell me what happened yesterday?" Carter's voice was barely a whisper. "Mum said we were going on a trip. She drove us here. Then she told me to wait by the dumpster. She said she'd be right back. And she didn't come back?" Carter shook his head, tears welling up again. Holloway scribbled notes. "Do you know your mom's full name?" "Rebecca Hayes." "And where do you live?" "I don't know. We moved a lot." Holloway frowned. "You don't know your address?" "We stayed in hotels, sometimes motels, sometimes in the car." Stone's jaw tightened. He leaned forward. "You see those bruises on his arms, Deputy?" Holloway's eyes shifted to Carter's forearms, faint, yellowish marks, like fingerprints. "Kid," Holloway said gently, "did someone hurt you?" Carter looked down. "Mom's boyfriend. He got mad sometimes." Stone's hands curled into fists beneath the table. He forced himself to stay calm. Holloway sighed and closed his notepad. "All right. Here's what happens next. I'm going to call Child Protective Services. They'll take Carter into temporary custody while we locate his mother and investigate." "No," Stone said. Holloway blinked. "Excuse me. You're not putting him in the system." "Mr. Mercer, I don't think you understand." "I understand perfectly," Stone said, his voice low and steady. "I understand that CPS is going to shuffle him between foster homes until he's 18. I understand that no one's going to care about the promises they make to him. And I understand that this kid deserves better." "And you think you're better?" Stone met his eyes. I know I am. Holloway leaned back. You can't just take custody of a child because you feel like it. There's a process. Then start the process. It takes months, background checks, home visits, court hearings. You really want to put yourself through that? Yes. Holloway studied him. Why? You don't even know this kid. Stone looked at Carter, who was watching him with wide, hopeful eyes. Because someone did this for me once, Stone said quietly, and it saved my life. There was a long silence. Finally, Holloway exhaled. I'll make some calls. But until we sort this out, Carter stays with CPS. No, Stone said again. He stays with me. That's not deputy. Reaper's voice came from the doorway. He stepped inside, followed by chains and hammer. You really want to fight this battle? Holloway stood, his hand drifting toward his holster again. This is accountability, Reaper said calmly. You failed this kid, we didn't. So here's what's going to happen. Carter stays with Stone until the paperwork clears. You want to arrest someone? Arrest all 200 of us. But you're not taking that boy. Holloway looked around. Through the window he could see the bikers, still standing, still watching. He sat back down. Fine, he said quietly. But if anything happens to him, it's on you. Stone nodded. I can live with that. Comment below what time it is where you are, and stay tuned. The fight for Carter is just beginning. By 8 a.m., the parking lot of Last Stop Gas had become a makeshift camp. Bikers sat on their motorcycles, leaning against trucks, drinking coffee from thermoses and sharing stories. The morning sun climbed higher, casting golden light across the desert, and the air smelled of dust, gasoline, and determination. Inside the diner, Stone sat with Carter at the corner booth. The boy had finally fallen asleep, his head resting against Stone's arm, his small body curled up under a borrowed leather jacket. Stone hadn't moved in over an hour. He just sat there, watching the kid breathe, making sure he felt safe. Reaper walked over and slid into the seat across from them. He set down 2 cups of coffee and pushed one toward Stone. Kid's out cold, Reaper said quietly. Stone nodded. First real sleep he's had in who knows how long. You know this isn't going to be easy, right? I know. CPS is going to push. The courts are going to push. Hell, even some of the crew might push. Stone looked up. You pushing, Reaper? Reaper shook his head. No, brother. I'm all in. But I need to know you are too. Because once you start this, there's no walking away. I'm not walking away. Good. Reaper leaned back. Then we need a plan. Before Stone could respond, the diner door swung open. A woman in a grey pantsuit stepped inside, her heels clicking against the tile floor. She had short brown hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of expression that said she'd seen every angle of human failure and didn't flinch anymore. She walked straight to the booth and stopped. Eli Mercer, she said. Stone looked up. That's me. I'm Sharon Caldwell. Child Protective Services? Deputy Holloway called me. Stone's expression didn't change. And? Sharon glanced at Carter, still asleep. I need to take him into custody. No. Sharon's eyebrows rose. Excuse me? You heard me. No. Sharon pulled a folder from her briefcase and set it on the table. Mr. Mercer, I understand you want to help, but you have no legal right to this child. He needs to be placed in temporary foster care while we locate his mother and assess the situation. He's not going anywhere. Sharon's tone hardened. This isn't a negotiation. You're right, it's not. Stone leaned forward. Because I'm not negotiating, I'm telling you, this kid stays with me. Sharon crossed her arms. On what grounds? On the grounds that I'm the only person who's shown up for him, on the grounds that he's terrified of being abandoned again, and on the grounds that I'm not going to let you shuffle him into a system that doesn't give a damn about him. That's a very cynical view of the system. It's a realistic one. Sharon exhaled slowly. She looked at Carter, then back at Stone. You really think you can take care of him? A child requires stability, routine, a home. Can you provide that? Yes. You're a biker. I'm a veteran. I own a mechanic shop. I've got a house, a steady income, and a network of people who die for this kid. So yeah, I can provide stability. Sharon studied him for a long moment. Then she sat down. "All right," she said. "Let's say I believe you. Let's say you genuinely want to help. That doesn't change the law. You can't just take custody of a child because you feel like it. There's a process. Background checks, home inspections, court hearings. It takes time. Then we start now." Sharon pulled out a pen. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." She clicked the pen and opened the folder. "Fine, but until the court approves temporary custody, Carter stays with me." "No. Mr. Mercer—" "I said no." Stone's voice was calm, but absolute. "You want me to go through your process? Fine, I'll do it. But Carter doesn't leave my sight until then." Sharon's jaw tightened. "That's not how this works." "Then make it work." Sharon stared at him. Then she looked at Reaper, who sat with his arms crossed, and at the 200 bikers visible through the window. She set down her pen. "You're putting me in an impossible position," she said. "Good. Then you know how Carter feels." Sharon was silent for a moment. Then she exhaled slowly. "All right," she said quietly. "Here's what I can do. I can file an emergency petition for temporary guardianship. It'll fast-track the process. But you need to understand, if the court denies it or if I find anything in your background that raises red flags, Carter goes into foster care. No exceptions." Stone nodded. "Deal." Sharon stood. "I'll need your full name, address, and contact information. And I'll need to inspect your home within 48 hours. You'll have it." Sharon glanced at Carter one more time. "He's lucky you found him." "No," Stone said quietly. "I'm lucky I did." At 10:30 a.m., Sharon left with a stack of paperwork and a promise to return within 2 days. Stone watched her drive away, then turned to Reaper. "Do you really think the court's going to approve this?" Reaper asked. "They will if we make them." "And if they don't?" Stone looked down at Carter, who was starting to wake, his eyes blinking open slowly. "Then we fight," Stone said. "And we don't stop fighting until he's safe." Carter sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Stone?" "Right here, kid." "Are they going to take me away?" Stone knelt down so they were eye level. "No. I promise you, Carter. No one's taking you anywhere you don't want to go." Carter nodded slowly. "Okay." Stone stood and extended his hand. "Come on, let's get out of here." Carter took his hand, and together they walked out into the sunlight, where 200 bikers stood waiting, an army of loyalty, bound by a single promise: to protect one boy the world had forgotten. Stone's house sat at the end of a gravel road, 15 miles outside of Helena, Montana. It wasn't much. A 2-story cabin with weathered wood siding, a wraparound porch, and a garage big enough to fit 3 bikes and a workbench cluttered with tools. The property stretched out across 12 acres of open land, bordered by pine trees and a creek that ran cold year-round. It was quiet, isolated, safe, exactly what Carter needed. Stone pulled his Harley into the driveway at 11:47 a.m., Carter seated behind him, his small arms wrapped tightly around Stone's waist. The convoy of bikers had followed them, 40 riders, including Reaper, Chains, Hammer, and Wrench. The rest had dispersed, heading back to their lives, but with a promise: if you need us, we're one call away. Stone killed the engine and dismounted. He helped Carter down, then stood for a moment, looking at the house. He hadn't been back in 3 weeks. He'd been on the road, working contract jobs, drifting, but now, standing here with a 6-year-old boy who had no one else, the place felt different. It felt like home. Reaper pulled up beside him and cut his engine. "Nice place." "It's quiet," Stone said. "That's what you need. Quiet." Stone nodded. He looked down at Carter, who was staring at the house with wide eyes. "This is where you live?" Carter asked. "Yeah, and for now it's where you live too." Carter's eyes filled with something Stone hadn't seen in him before. Wonder. "Can I go inside?" Stone smiled. "Yeah, kid. Let's go inside." The interior of the house was sparse but clean. A living room with a worn leather couch, a coffee table stacked with motorcycle magazines, and a fireplace that hadn't been used in months. The kitchen was small, Just a stove, a fridge, and a table with 2 chairs. Upstairs, there were 2 bedrooms and a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. Stone led Carter upstairs and opened the door to the 2nd bedroom. It was empty, except for a single bed frame, a dresser, and a window overlooking the creek. "This can be your room," Stone said. Carter walked inside, slowly looking around. "Mine? Yours?" Carter touched the wall, as if testing whether it was real. "I've never had my own room before." Stone's chest tightened. "Well, now you do." Carter turned to him. "What if they take me away?" Stone knelt down. "They're not going to take you away, Carter. I'm not going to let that happen. But what if... Listen to me." Stone's voice was firm but kind. "I made you a promise, and I keep my promises. You're staying here, with me, for as long as you need." Carter's eyes shimmered with tears. Then, without warning, he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Stone's neck. Stone froze. He wasn't used to this affection, trust, vulnerability. But after a moment, he wrapped his arms around the boy and held him. "It's going to be okay, kid," Stone said quietly. "I've got you." Downstairs, Reaper, Chains, and Hammer were unloading supplies, groceries, clothes, toys, and a sleeping bag. They'd stopped at a Walmart on the way and bought everything a kid might need. "Where do you want this stuff?" Hammer called out. Stone came downstairs with Carter at his side. Kitchen for the food, living room for the rest. Chains set down a bag of clothes. "Got him some jeans, shirts, socks, should fit." "Thanks." Wrench walked in carrying a small bike, a red BMX with training wheels. "Figured every kid needs a bike." Carter's eyes went wide. Is that for me?" Wrench grinned. "All yours, little man." Carter ran over and touched the handlebars, his face lit up with pure joy. Stone looked at his crew, these men who dropped everything, spent their own money, and shown up for a child they didn't know. He didn't have words for what he felt, so he just nodded. "Thank you," he said quietly. Reaper clapped him on the shoulder. "We're family, Stone. This is what we do." At 3 p.m., Sharon Caldwell arrived for the home inspection. She stepped out of her sedan, clipboard in hand, and surveyed the property. Stone met her on the porch. "Ms. Caldwell?" "Mr. Mercer." She glanced at the bikers in the driveway. "Quite the support system you've got. They're good people." Sharon walked past him into the house. She moved methodically, checking the kitchen, the living room, the bathroom. She asked questions about smoke detectors, locks, food, safety. Stone answered each one calmly, thoroughly. Finally, she went upstairs to Carter's room. The boy was sitting on the bed, organizing the clothes Chains had bought for him. "Hi, Carter," Sharon said gently. "Hi. How are you doing?" "Good. Do you like it here?" Carter nodded. "Stone said I can stay." Sharon glanced at Stone, who stood in the doorway. "And do you feel safe here?" Carter looked at Stone, then back at Sharon. "Yeah," he said. "I feel safe." Sharon made a note on her clipboard. She asked a few more questions, then stood. "All right, Carter, thank you for talking to me." She walked back downstairs with Stone. "The house checks out," Sharon said. "It's clean, safe, and appropriate for a child. And Carter clearly trusts you. So we're good." Sharon paused. "For now. But I'm going to be honest with you, Mr. Mercer. The court hearing is in 5 days. The judge will review your background, your financial situation, and your ability to provide long-term care. If there's anything in your past that raises concerns, there won't be." Sharon met his eyes. "I hope you're right, because if you're not, Carter goes back into the system. And I don't think either of you wants that." "We don't." Sharon nodded. She handed him a business card. "Call me if you need anything, and Stone..." "Yeah? Don't screw this up." "I won't." That night, after the crew left and the house fell quiet, Stone sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the stars. Behind him, through the window, he could see Carter asleep in his new bed, the red BMX leaning against the wall beside him. Stone exhaled slowly. He'd made a promise, and now everything depended on keeping it. The Lewis and Clark County Courthouse stood at the corner of Broadway and Park, a grey stone building with tall windows and the kind of weight that came from decades of deciding people's fates. Stone stood outside at 8:47 a.m., his hands shoved into the pockets of his leather jacket, his jaw tight. Carter stood beside him, dressed in the new jeans and button-up shirt Chains had bought. The boy's hair had been combed, his face washed, but his eyes betrayed his fear. "You okay, kid?" Stone asked quietly. Carter nodded, but his hand found Stone's and held on tight. Reaper walked up, dressed in a clean vest, his patch visible but respectful. Courtrooms on the second floor. Judge Evelyn Marsh. "I did some asking around. She's fair, but she's tough." "Good," Stone said. "We don't need easy. We need fair." Reaper nodded. "You ready?" Stone looked down at Carter. "You ready?" Carter swallowed. "What if they say no?" Stone knelt down so they were eye level. "Then we appeal. And if that doesn't work, we fight harder. But no matter what happens in there, you're not alone. You understand me?" Carter nodded. "Good. Let's go." The courtroom was smaller than Stone expected. Wooden benches, a raised judge's bench, and an American flag in the corner. Sharon Caldwell sat at one table, her briefcase open. Stone and Carter sat at the other, with a court-appointed attorney named David Reyes beside them. At 9:02 a.m. the bailiff stood. "All rise," the Honorable Judge Evelyn Marsh presiding. Judge Marsh entered, a black woman in her late 50s with silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun and reading glasses perched on her nose. She sat, surveyed the room, and opened the case file. "Be seated." She looked at Stone. "Mr. Mercer, you're petitioning for temporary guardianship of Carter Hayes." "Yes, Your Honor." "And Ms. Caldwell, you've completed your investigation." Sharon stood. "Yes, Your Honor. I've inspected Mr. Mercer's home, reviewed his background, and interviewed Carter. My recommendation is to approve temporary guardianship pending further review." Judge Marsh raised an eyebrow. "Pending further review. That's not a glowing endorsement." "No, Your Honor. But Mr. Mercer meets the baseline requirements. His home is safe. His background check came back clean. And Carter has expressed a strong preference to remain in his care." Judge Marsh looked at Stone. "Mr. Mercer, tell me why you're here." Stone stood. "Your Honor, 5 days ago, I stopped at a gas station and found Carter abandoned. His mother was gone. The authorities took hours to respond, and when they did, they wanted to put him into a system that would shuffle him around until he aged out. I couldn't let that happen." "Why not?" "Because I know what that feels like." Judge Marsh studied him. "You were in foster care?" "No, Your Honor. I was homeless at 12. After my father died and my mother couldn't handle it. I spent 3 years on the streets before a man named Jacob Hawthorne found me. He was a biker, a veteran. He took me in, gave me a home, and taught me what it meant to have someone fight for you. He saved my life. And when I saw Carter, alone and scared, I knew I had to do the same." Judge Marsh leaned back. "That's a powerful story, Mr. Mercer, but taking care of a child requires more than good intentions. It requires stability, resources, and the ability to meet his emotional and physical needs. Can you do that?" "Yes, Your Honor." "How?" "I own a mechanic shop. I have a steady income. I have a home, and I have a network of people, men and women, who will support him, who will show up when he needs them, who will teach him what it means to be part of a family." Judge Marsh glanced at Carter. "And you, young man, how do you feel about staying with Mr. Mercer?" Carter stood, his voice small but steady. "I want to stay with Stone." "Why?" "Because he keeps his promises." The courtroom was silent. Judge Marsh removed her glasses and set them on the bench. She looked at Sharon. "Ms. Caldwell, you said you recommend approval pending further review. What are your concerns?" Sharon hesitated. "Your Honor, Mr. Mercer has no prior experience raising a child. He lives alone, and his lifestyle, traveling, working contract jobs, could create instability. And yet you still recommend approval." "Yes, Your Honor, Because despite those concerns, I believe Mr. Mercer genuinely cares about Carter's well-being. And that matters. Judge Marsh nodded slowly. She looked at Stone. Mr. Mercer, if I grant this petition, it will be temporary. You'll have 6 months to prove you can provide a stable, loving home for Carter. During that time, Ms. Caldwell will conduct regular check-ins. If at any point I believe Carter's welfare is at risk, this arrangement ends. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. And you're willing to accept those terms? Absolutely. Judge Marsh paused. Then she picked up her gavel. Based on the evidence presented, and in the best interest of the child, I'm granting temporary guardianship of Carter Hayes to Eli Mercer for a period of 6 months. This arrangement will be reviewed at the end of that term. She struck the gavel. Court adjourned. Stone exhaled. Carter turned to him, eyes wide. Does that mean— Yeah, kid, Stone said, pulling him into a hug. It means you're staying. Carter wrapped his arms around Stone's neck and didn't let go. Outside the courthouse, Reaper and the crew were waiting. When Stone and Carter emerged, the bikers erupted into cheers. You did it, brother! Chains shouted. Stone shook his head. We did it! Reaper clapped him on the back. Now the real work begins. Stone looked down at Carter, who was smiling, really smiling, for the first time since they'd met. Yeah, Stone said, but we're ready. Hit that like button if you're rooting for Stone and Carter. And stay with us. This story isn't over yet. 6 months passed like a season changing, slowly, then all at once. Stone's house on Copper Ridge transformed. The empty second bedroom filled with life. Posters of supermarkets on the walls, a bookshelf crammed with donated books, a toy chest overflowing with action figures and model cars. The red BMX leaned against the porch railing, its training wheels long removed after Stone spent 3 Sundays teaching Carter to ride. The mechanic shop became Carter's second home. After school, the boy would sit on a stool beside Stone's workbench, handing him wrenches and asking questions. The crew adopted him without hesitation. Chains taught him how to change a tire, Wrench showed him how to read an engine, and Reaper, ever the storyteller, filled his head with tales of the open road. Carter stopped flinching when someone raised their voice. He stopped checking the driveway every night, waiting for his mother to return. He stopped asking if he'd have to leave, because somewhere along the way he realized the truth. He was home. On a Saturday morning in late February, Stone woke to the sound of footsteps padding down the hallway. He opened his eyes and saw Carter standing in the doorway holding a piece of paper. Morning, kid, Stone said, sitting up. Morning. Carter hesitated. Can I show you something? Always. Carter walked over and handed him the paper. It was a drawing, crayon on construction paper. 2 figures stood side by side, one tall, one small. Above them, in crooked letters, Carter had written, My family. Stone stared at it for a long moment. His throat tightened. You drew this? He asked quietly. Carter nodded. It's us. Stone looked at the boy. This kid who'd been abandoned, bruised and terrified 6 months ago, who now stood in front of him with confidence, trust and hope. Can I keep it? Stone asked. Carter smiled. Yeah. Stone set the drawing on his nightstand, then pulled Carter into a hug. Thank you, kid. For what? For letting me be your family. At 10 a.m., Stone's phone buzzed. It was Sharon Caldwell. Final review hearing is Monday at 9 a.m. See you there. Stone set down the phone and exhaled. This was it. The moment that would decide whether Carter stayed or whether the system took him back. Reaper walked in with 2 cups of coffee. That the caseworker? Yeah. Hearing's Monday. Reaper handed him a cup. You nervous? A little. Don't be. You've done everything right. The kid's thriving. Anyone with eyes can see that. Yeah, but judges don't always see what they should. Reaper sat down. Then we make sure they do. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Stone, Carter and the crew arrived at the courthouse at 8:45 a.m. This time, the gallery was full, 40 bikers, all dressed in clean vests, all silent and respectful. They weren't there to intimidate, they were there to witness. Judge Marsh entered at 9 a.m., and the hearing began. Sharon Caldwell stood. Your Honor, I'm pleased to report that Mr. Mercer has exceeded every expectation. Carter is enrolled in school, where his teachers report significant improvement in behavior and academic performance. The home environment is stable, supportive, and nurturing. I recommend converting temporary guardianship to permanent custody. Judge Marsh looked at Stone. Mr. Mercer, how has the last 6 months been? Stone stood. Challenging, rewarding, life-changing. Carter's taught me more about what it means to show up than I ever learned on my own. Judge Marsh turned to Carter. And you, young man, how do you feel about staying with Mr. Mercer permanently? Carter stood, his voice steady. I want to stay. Stone's my family. Judge Marsh nodded slowly. She looked at Sharon. Any concerns? None, Your Honor. Judge Marsh picked up her gavel. Then it's my honor to grant permanent custody of Carter Hayes to Eli Mercer. This court recognizes the bond formed between guardian and child, and I have every confidence that Carter will thrive in Mr. Mercer's care. She struck the gavel. Congratulations. The gallery erupted. Bikers stood, clapping and cheering. Reaper pulled Stone into a bear hug. Chains ruffled Carter's hair. Stone knelt down in front of Carter, his eyes shining. You're stuck with me now, kid. Carter grinned. Good. That evening, the crew threw a celebration at Stone's house. The driveway filled with bikes. The porch glowed with string lights. Music played. Food grilled. Laughter echoed across the property. Stone stood on the porch watching Carter run through the yard with the other kids, children of the crew who'd shown up to celebrate. The boy was laughing, free, alive. Reaper walked up beside him. You did it, brother. Stone nodded. We did it. So what now? Stone looked at Carter. Now we keep the promise. Every day. For as long as he needs me. Reaper raised his beer. To keeping promises. Stone clinked his bottle against Reaper's. To keeping promises. Later that night, after everyone left, Stone tucked Carter into bed. The boy looked up at him, eyes heavy with sleep. Stone. Yeah, kid? Thank you. For what? For not leaving. Stone's chest tightened. He knelt beside the bed and rested his hand on Carter's shoulder. I'll never leave, Carter. That's a promise, and I keep my promises. Carter smiled. I know. Stone stood, turned off the light and walked to the door. He paused, looking back at the boy who'd changed his life. Good night, kid. Good night, Dad. Stone froze. His heart stopped. He turned back, but Carter was already asleep, breathing softly. Peacefully. Stone stood in the doorway for a long moment, his eyes burning. Then he stepped into the hallway, closed the door gently, and whispered into the darkness. Good night, son. Outside, beneath a sky full of stars, the wind carried the sound of distant engines, riders somewhere out on the road, living the code, keeping the promise. Because that's what they did. That's what they'd always do. Protect, defend, show up, for every child the world forgets, for every promise that needs keeping, for every family forged not by blood, but by iron. Thank you for riding with us. If this story moved you, subscribe and stay tuned for more journeys on the road less traveled.